Occult Confessions is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit occultconfessions.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the occult on the digital airwaves. At the core of Krishnamurti's philosophy is the idea that God, or truth, or reality can only be grasped in a state of absolute freedom. That freedom is achieved by throwing off everything you've ever known or thought was true. There is a kind of via negativa or negation at the core of Krishnamurti's method, but it is a negation so radical that it denies the utility of any method. You must have no tradition, no guru, no ritual, no plan or goal, no memory, no thought, and then you can approach what is. You must be bound by no religion or belief system, for they only serve to separate, divide, and delude, and you must not try to achieve this enlightenment in any special way, for the trying itself will prevent you from seeing the truth. The effort will trap you in time with a specific goal that prevents you from seeing what is. Your goal clouds your vision. All politics and projects and grander motives must be set aside. The transformation of consciousness through the ability to see things as they are without the millennia of human constructed conceptions standing in the way will bring about change required in the social world. Krishnamurti's teaching is really as simple as that, but the simplicity is seductive because it is a simplicity that is remarkably difficult to achieve. My name is Dr. Rob C. Thompson, Supreme Hierophant of your Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, joined this day by our sister of the 85th degree, Savannah Barrett.
Hello.
This is the last time with Krishnamurti. Are you ready?
Yes, but I'm also I'm a little sad to not be talking about him anymore, honestly. But yes, I'm excited. I was really excited to have this conversation.
And our patron progenitor, what are we calling you now?
I don't remember. It was something upgraded, I think.
Progenitor?
I'll take that.
Progenitron. So, Johnny Cook, you were also sad that Krishnamurti is coming to an end.
Very. I wish that he could have been perpetual.
Well, but as I said in our texting back and forth, we can continue to reference Krishnamurti now that we have learned the Krishnamurti. So he will be with us from this moment on. All right, let's pledge it out. We, the members of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, do solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it. So a good way into Krishnamurti's ideas, and let's take it slow here, guys. Don't hesitate to ask questions. That's why you're both here. You're my question askers. Some people just let me ramble on, and then later they're like, back what you said 10 minutes ago, Rob. You got to ask me as we go.
I'm ready. I feel like I don't have this problem.
No,
so.
you don't. No, you don't. A good way into Krishnamurti's ideas is the way he describes God. Maybe that's just my perspective, but I think it gets fairly direct when he's trying to conceptualize an idea that all religious and spiritual and just like human people have struggled to conceptualize over time. Believers and, well, maybe non-believers don't have a problem. They're just like, imaginary. But for believers, or would-be believers, conceptualizing God is very challenging. So what does Krishnamurti say on the question of God? And I want to emphasize as we go into this is not the way Krishnamurti leads off with his teaching. I'm leading off this way to sort of like give us, it's my way of teaching the teaching.
It's like an anchor point for us, I guess.
Yes, yeah. But Krishnamurti really does downplay the supernatural, so he doesn't talk about God primarily. But he does, so it's in his books. He does.
The beloved,
God.
right?
The beloved, well.
Oh.
To begin, he said, God is not the word is not the thing. All right, so far so good. The word God is not God. Now, that in itself is an anti-Judeo-Christian idea, insofar as, the word God, particularly in Jewish tradition, is supposed to be very powerful. But Krishnamurti is saying God and the word God, the thought, the idea God, not the same thing. He says, to know that which is immeasurable, which is not of time, the mind must be free of time, which means the mind must be free from all thought, from all ideas about God.
You don't have any preconceptions, right?
Yes. This is incredibly difficult.
And I feel like I'm going to say this a million times in this episode. It's just, how is it possible to do that? How is it possible to just
free your mind from time?
Yes. I mean, I guess it's with the way that we're raised, because I'm sure if you were raised in a particular way, it would be possible. But
like Krishnamurti, if we were plucked out
yes. of a Eastern tradition into a Eastern-Western blend of traditions and named a guru.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, but like we're raised in this really arguably strict society where you have to be to these places at these exact times and stuff like that, and
very
then on top
ritualistic.
of that, yeah, and then also very ritualistic, and also like with religion and stuff, you're it's based off of, I guess, how you're raised too. So then you have those preconceived notions, and then when you go out into the other world, you meet everybody else's preconceived notions, and so it's like I feel like I'm going to say that a lot in this.
How do you get rid of all these?
Do this?
How do you let all this go?
Because honestly, at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, I can't even turn my own brain off to go to sleep. So I'm like, I don't even know how to do that.
But I mean, I think that's fair. Remember, Krishnamurti died fairly, maybe not convinced, but concerned that he had failed to communicate the teaching to others. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how hard it can be to grasp. And I have been thinking about this now since the summertime, so not a long time when you compare it to the rest of my life. A small percentage of my life I've been thinking about this, so I've started to come to some ideas about this, but they're off canon of Krishnamurti. Like today we're going to talk canon, and then we can go off canon. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I almost think you have to go off canon because Krishnamurti is saying at the core here that there can't be canon.
Yeah. I was just thinking that.
Including Krishnamurti canon.
Yeah.
You know? So it's fine, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's fine.
That we can't do this? I can't do it.
That it's tricky, yeah. I can do it, I think, for moments, not for long.
Well, I'm even just thinking about like our job in particular, running a theater. Like we have very specific deadlines that we have to meet.
Should be outside. Oh, you're worried about being outside of time.
Yeah, but
the mind must be free of time. He's really thinking of the time in terms of like history, I think, here. Not like appointments and stuff. You need to exist outside of history and progress and the concept that one thing leads to another, cause and effect, that kind of thing.
Okay.
More conceptually.
That feels more doable.
Yeah, you can still show up to the show on time. You just don't believe in cause and effect, so if you press the button, the light doesn't go on. Nah. Mm-hmm. So
then my light is broken and I need to fix it.
Krishnamurti is talking about the first and last freedom, the most direct articulation of his philosophy, which was published in 1954. And it aligns remarkably well with the direction of post-structuralist continental philosophy, which came out around the same time period. In fact, Jacques Derrida wouldn't compose his seminal theory of the gramme and différance until more than a decade later, but if that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about it. Derrida isn't really necessary to today's conversation, but I know there's like grad students out there and humanities scholars who would just like got off on that.
I was about to say, I've never heard those words before in my life, so.
We can move on. Let's go back to what Krishnamurti meant. So for Krishnamurti, thought, your thoughts, or conceptualizing your concepts of what things are, chairs and dogs and time and God, creates the core separation between me and the truth or what is. Derrida said this similarly, that our concept, our word, he was very focused on words, but that our word, this is Jacques Derrida, stands between us and the rest of the world, so that we're never really present with anyone or anything, because we're really just interacting with our thoughts about them, our concept of them, our words for them.
Like slapping a label on something and be like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, we can't ever have like a completely new, we're in a room full of chairs. We can't ever have a completely new encounter with a chair, because we will always see it as chair. And we'll have the whole definition and function of chair kicking around in our heads, standing between us and the object itself. So we could never approach it sort of like when you go into an art museum and you see something completely off the wall, you can't approach it like you would that thing. And even to a large extent in the art museum, you're viewing that as art because it's in an art museum. But, you have to imagine that you're just walking down the street and you see something you have no concept for. That's what Krishnamurti's sort of inching toward, is engaging with the world like you're engaging with some sort of like interdimensional object that just materializes in front of you.
Treating everything as if it's novel.
Yeah, it's that Bluey episode where Bandit tries to, imagine that he's a baby and everything
experiencing
is new.
everything for the first time.
Experiencing everything for the first time, yeah. Only a mind. See, there you go, Savannah. I'm helping you out here. I'm got your references.
Because you kind of are experiencing everything for the first time.
We are.
Yeah.
Every moment we are. Every moment is new. That's true. It's deep stuff. Deep stuff, John. Only a mind free from all its accumulated knowledge and supposed understanding can really grasp the greater truth. Think about it this way. Back to God. My concept of God is based on everything I've ever been told or read about God since I was born. These are sort of like piling up. I've got a big pile of God thoughts. But those ideas are themselves passed down imperfectly from human authors going back to the beginning of time. God in God's transcendence can never be fully captured in any language or image used to describe God. And so, my many refracted and incomplete impressions of God create a barrier between me and truly grasping God's nature. They're like a crutch that keeps me from ever reaching the top of the mountain. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I have to walk with these crutches, I'll never make it to the top. I'll always fall backwards.
But I feel like I guess not. I mean, I'm just thinking like in order to know anything about God, you have to learn something about them, right? But I guess that's not what they're...
Not in Krishnamurti's view of things. You want a pure, clean, free mind to approach any concept. And you would ask that pure, clean, free mind about the origin of all things or something.
Oh.
And let that question drop down. And that's where God resides. Well, we'll get to where God resides, actually. So, another way to think about this is that my idea of God as a human-made concept is always caught inside the closed system of human ideas. The system is closed because every concept can only be defined using other concepts which refer to other concepts in an infinite regress or tautological loop. So if God is outside the human, and I am trying to capture God or describe or otherwise, make sense of God with human terms, language is so essentially human, then I've lost God. God has slipped through my grasp in my attempt to grasp God. He slips through my fingers. Or she, they, the God. If I believe that God is above, for example, I can only understand the concept of above with reference to below. I may say above is up, but to answer what up is, I might say above, or not down. Defining down then loops back to the concept of up, and we're always dealing in abstractions and not in the true nature of what exists. We're playing word games rather than defining God, because the definition of God can only be reached outside of language itself. He continues, God or truth, or what you will, is a thing that comes into being from moment to moment, and it happens only in a state of freedom and spontaneity. God is not a thing of the mind. It does not come through self-projection. It comes only when there is virtue, which is freedom. Time and memory, now he's not, this is me explaining what that means. Time and memory are key barriers to real understanding, because situating our perceptions in time relies on a string of memories, and memories are imperfect. Really deeply imperfect, if you've watched any true crime documentaries lately. I swear I saw him. It was that guy. He was wearing gloves. Whatever. I'm looking at a dogwood tree out my front window. As I was writing this, I was looking at a dogwood tree out my front window. The truth of the tree is here in the moment. That moment when I was writing. It's what the tree used to be. It's not what the tree used to be, I should say, or what it might become. The truth of the tree is the tree's right there in front of me. The truth of you is right here with me. Not what I remembered about you from even 2 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. It's us right here, right now. That's the truth of us. Not what we're going to do next, not what we used to do before, but here right now. If we think about what's going to come next, or we think about what used to be, we miss what's in front of us. Mm. We're no longer with each other. We're with our concept of each other, who we think you are. Right? Like, doesn't this happen so often when you're having a conversation with somebody and they're really not talking to you, they're talking to who they think you are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not actually listening, and you can tell they're not listening to the words you're saying. They're hearing what they think you would say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tricky, though. We all do this.
It is, yeah.
I'm saying this as a person who does this, particularly to my wife. But the more we know somebody, I think the more apt we are to, like, read in. And sometimes we're right, but sometimes we're wrong, what that person's trying to say. So, to think, any trains of associations my mind might take on: trees I've known, the fact that I've had a friend who once lived on the street named after a dogwood, the dogs I've lived with over my lifetime, all these are going into my dogwood concept and remove me from the truth of the tree in front of me. I'm not actually looking at the tree anymore. I'm thinking of these other things. I'm no longer attempting to grasp the tree. I'm living in worlds of memory. By releasing my memory of the tree, I can actually really experience it as the new experience that it always is, insofar as John has said, every moment of the unfolding present is new. It is a new tree. Every moment that I'm with it is a new moment with it, but I'm too busy associating it with other things to actually see what's there. In an important sense, God, or the voice of God, can only be heard and grasped as a personal and direct experience. Much later, Krishnamurti was addressing the question of what God is to his longtime friend and biographer Pupul Jayakar. He said, "My being is essentially based on what I have understood, not verbally, but the feeling in me that there is something enormous, something incredibly immense. This internal world, internal truth, the silence of consciousness and being is a vast thing in Krishnamurti's experience, and this is where we go to find God. I come to you," he said, "and put this question. Are you ready to answer, or do you hold the question quietly? Hold it. Do you understand? And out of that very holding, without any reaction, any response, comes the answer." He went on, "In the holding of the question, what is God? Who is God? You just hold it. You don't look for associations. You don't try to answer it. You just let the question sit quietly inside of you. In the holding of it, energy is being accumulated, and that energy will act, not you acting." So there's a kind of anticipatory energy that builds up around the question that answers the question. Mm-hmm. You don't answer the question. It's that energy. So, with this anticipatory energy answering the question, he says, so have we understood the nature of God. Let me say this a different way now. God, in Krishnamurti's view, is the answer to the question held quietly in the stillness of the mind. The fact that an answer arises without effort and without the influences of time or memory, that is the evidence for God's existence, as Krishnamurti understands God. God answers you in the silence, when you aren't trying to answer yourself. God provides the truth. God is the truth. So this is not necessarily a personal or individualized identity, but to Krishnamurti, it's the ground of all being. The universe, he said, is in a state of meditation, and that is the ground, that is the origin of everything.
I'm just wondering, though, like, if I'm afraid that the answer that you get in that silence could still accidentally be a conceived notion. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Mm-hmm. The skill is to really tune everything out and just let the answer come. Mm-hmm. God will speak in the silence from the ground of all being.
Because, I mean, for me, at least, the instinct would be to just fill the space with a thought, even subconsciously, just like something will come in.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of practice, I think. I mean, because I used to do this with the spiritualists. We didn't conceive of it as like the ground of all being answering us, but we tried to talk to the dead. Mm-hmm. And it was basically the same process. You would sit in a circle and you would try to differentiate your own thoughts from the voices of the dead, who theoretically can influence, psychically, speak to you. So in a way, I'm very familiar with what he's talking about here. If you remove this, lens on it of the dead are speaking to you, that silence, if you can get yourself to really quiet down and stop thinking and just let the question sit, that silence provides an answer. But yeah, I won't kid you, Savannah, that it's just like, oh, you just do that and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm already stuck on that. I cannot stop my brain from thinking.
That's
ever.
The trick. That's the trick. I found, because I have practiced a little bit some of Krishnamurti's ideas here, and I even wonder the degree to which that's an actual Krishnamurti thing to do, but I find that releasing memory is a very powerful thing. If you really think about giving up your memory and just allowing yourself to be fully present with whatever, let all your concepts go. I think if you make a conscious effort to do that, you can have that moment of clarity. I don't really know what it offers, but it feels good.
But don't think too hard about it.
No, because I have not done it in the sense that he's talking about here, where I bring a question. I'm just letting all of it go to be present in the moment where I am doing what I'm doing and not have any other ideas or things that I should be doing or ways that I'm processing what's happening. I just let it all go and be right there. And when a memory sort of starts to creep in or, an idea, I recognize it as being constructed and let it go.
Is that kind of the idea between with automatic writing?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. It very much sounds like Dark Pool.
It is. I think that in a certain sense, Krishnamurti is going another way around to the subconscious, for sure. And he's labeling the subconscious as a kind of, if not supernatural, it's a powerful site for truth and the only actual site for truth. It's a stripping down of consciousness to the subconscious self, the pure, unconstructed self. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The notion of denying or getting free of time, this is what Savannah is most concerned about, is central to the work.
I'm most concerned about turning off my thoughts, but
it's central to the work of transforming consciousness. Speaking to a group of teachers at a school in the Rishi Valley in India committed to sharing his philosophy, Krishnamurti said, "Time is a danger, because the moment we look to time to change, it is really a continuation of what has been. Time is really a further continuation of my desire to go on as I am. A psychical change in myself through time is an illusion because it encourages laziness, postponement, a sense of achievement, and vanity." We have, I think, in each episode, talked about this at the very beginning. This idea that change needs to be instantaneous, or it isn't real. You're putting yourself in this lazy, postponing, vain process of getting better at something, rather than just making a shift. To truly transform the way you think, you have to deny time, deny the work of changing yourself, give up the past and present for the sake of doing it and for no other motive. You must wipe away every memory that arises as you go through your day and compel yourself into an absolute experience of the present with no conception of what you're doing it for. Yeah. You can't say, I'm going to get enlightened. Let me give up time. All you can say is, I'm going to give up time because screw it. I'm just done. I'm out. I expect nothing from this.
That's tough.
From this being life or
Anything.
From
right?
this undertaking, from the surrendering of time, I expect no result. This is where I start to riff on Krishnamurti to some extent, and I have no idea what he would think of some of the ideas I've had in this regard. I find this very inspirational for art and for a process of art making, and I think I come closest to the state of mind when I'm making art ... not all the time. I mean, now in my current job, I make a lot of art that has specific goals and has to accomplish certain things and is, fitting inside of certain programming and appealing to a certain audience. And there's a lot of goals.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, as a human being, I have, I think, come closest to having no agenda when I have sat down to make art just because it feels good and not worried about the result. I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble doing that as well, but I think that's where I'm most capable of it. So I think that to a certain extent, Krishnamurti makes it seem like, because I think this was true of him, that he just sort of sat under a tree and this arrived. But he's saying to a large extent that you have to find this truth inside of yourself. You have to find this presence inside of yourself. So I don't think, and he did not succeed very well in teaching this. And I think a lot of his students tried to just be like a big mind, like the free mind, like just sit there until their mind gets free, or talk about it until their mind gets free. But I think that there are probably many paths to this state of mind, and that art can be one of them. It's one that I think, since I've spent my whole life on, I know well. Like, I can see when I'm creating something that's for a purpose, and when I'm creating something that has no purpose. And it's that purposeless art that is that perfect state of connection and truth. Does that connect with you?
Yes. I feel like it's really hard. It's hard to say recently, because you're right about like all the art that we've been making recently. It feels like there's all this other stuff.
It has to do with things.
Yeah. So
it's more like class. When you make art in class. Not your class, because you got to build stuff.
My class is the most stressful point.
But like my devising class, for example, where the students are told to make whatever they want, whatever feels good. I think that there are still all sorts of ulterior motives and things that are clouding the students' capacity to truly accomplish it. But they take big steps in that direction if they do the class right. You're not there probably by the end, but you can see what it would be like if you literally gave everything up and just created something because it felt good.
I was thinking back to Poe so I directed for Rob's theater company a show based off of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, and honestly, I feel like I kind of did that entire experience where, like, obviously I wanted it to be good, but you kind of were like, do you want to direct this? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know why. I'm just going to do it. And I don't know why it's this show, but I'm going to do it. And I thought, oh, I'm so proud of how that show turned out. But then maybe that's also working against it if you're, I don't know.
You don't want to be proud, but but that's after the fact, right?
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking of like, now it's memories and stuff too, but whatever. I'm just imagining like some of the scenes and how those things turned out and the like silhouettes of like how these things looked. And I remember having so much fun being at rehearsal because we were just there, not worried about literally anything else other than just what the script says and trying to make it feel right kind of thing.
I mean, the process of making our Dark Pole show over the pandemic, I thought was very much like this. It was close because I gave myself over to whatever came out of all our meditation work and the storytelling that came out of that. And I didn't try to control it or make it one thing or another. I literally forced myself to follow everybody's inspiration and to a certain extent my own inspiration. I mean, it's that Dionysus Apollo thing. I think you need to almost live in a Dionysian mindset, which, you know, Savannah will say, like when we're sitting in the office and I'm like, okay, it's going to be like this. We're going to do this, 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 and this. That's my Dionysian mindset where I'm just like, idea. And you're like, all right, I'll process this later.
I don't know how to build a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, I know, but cool. This is this and this. I think you need to follow that to the conclusion that you're no longer really trying to please anybody but yourself, or to feel that complete creative freedom of creating whatever you want. I think that children can do this very well. Like when my children play, there's no goal. I think to a certain extent, we need to take this, and I haven't processed all these thoughts. I'm sorry, listeners. I'm just sort of like riffing here, and I'm reaching like the limit of what I mean by all this. But watching my children play, particularly my daughter, she's about 6, and she's really, you know, she's like daddy's little girl, right? And she's very much like me. She's got that kind of like sensitive, inward focused attitude. I know I'm a podcaster and a college professor, and I, you know, speak publicly for a living now, but when I was little, this is how I was. And I did a lot of this, like creating my own world and living in it all by myself. And I see her doing this, and I think to some extent she's capturing that pure spirit of unfiltered creativity. She's just in it, and she doesn't care. Like, it's literally for no one but her. But we lose that over time. So maybe part of what Krishnamurti is talking about here is being able to access that pure creativity of the child within the sophistication of adulthood. I'm not sure what the combination yields, but I think it gets us closer to truth, because I don't think my daughter is, you know, revealing the truth here. She's just free of all the bullshit. If she could look for the truth, maybe.
She's not letting the question sit. She's just...
Yeah, she doesn't have the question. She can't conceptualize the question.
Could you go to her and be like, what is God?
I can.
And then her first question will be, what is God?
Yeah, it comes right back at me. Yeah, because the child is also a sponge, right?
Yeah, no, I guess also relies on the parent to answer these questions,
right.
too. So
yeah, she has to, in a certain sense, be free of the question in order to enjoy the play. When she has the question, she comes to us, and then the sponge, you know, gradually becomes us. This big stack of things we've been told over time. So yeah, maybe we're onto something here. Maybe it is that creative, that open creativity of childhood, paired with the sophistication of the adulthood to understand the question and then put it in that free space.
Yeah. You need both sides of the coin, and you only ever have one.
Yeah, because you're only living in one space. You're
Yeah.
either too ignorant to ask the question, but really creative, or you've lost all your creativity, but you can phrase the question. Yeah. And I'm not meaning to suggest that, you know, Savannah and I, John, you know, we all create, we all act, we all perform and direct. We're not creative. I think we are very creative, but we have so many purposes.
yeah,
We're not free in our creation. We're bound by our
Goals.
yes, by time. Yeah. The idea that you can attempt this work without any motive is a tricky one to wrap your head around, but it points to psychologists' concept of flow, or the flow states. Let me phrase this another way. Flow is an experience of being fully immersed in whatever we're doing, and when the thing we're doing is good for us, like exercise or sports or art or writing or teaching or crafting or cooking or gardening, the experience of flow tends to make us better at whatever we're doing. And flow can only ever be achieved when we're not doing the thing with a reward in mind. The desire for the reward takes us out of the moment and projects us into the future. So, you can't act well in a performance if you're worried about how you look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whether the performance
like,
will be
now
well
that you say
received.
that, acting, I feel like is the time where I am the most
Free?
in that flow state. Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, this is the first time I've actually thought about it like this, but whenever I was in like class and I was about to take a test or about to walk on stage, beforehand, awful nerves. But as soon as I like set foot on stage or like got the test in front of me, I just like no stress whatsoever, and I just let it go.
You flow with it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah, so flow is another way to think about it. Flow in theory is about self-development, so there is a goal again, and to get better at basketball or to get better at acting or, get better at writing short stories. But theoretically, when you're in the middle of that, you're not worried about the consequence. For Krishnamurti, this is also true in terms of denying time, but motive further throws us back on the ego. If it's about me and not about the activity I'm attempting, then I will fail. Perhaps another way to phrase Krishnamurti's request that we deny time with no motive is that we deny time for the sake of doing it. We deny time because we enjoy the experience of denying time. Yeah?
I don't, how?
It's what we're talking about, but we sort of like take the art out of it. It's an art of life. You're no longer even creating anything. You're just living for the sake of living. You're denying progress in time and motive so that you can just be because it feels good, because it's fun.
Do you think that state makes it fun and makes it enjoyable?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I've approximated it, I'll say that I've approximated it. Maybe I've accomplished it. Who the hell knows? But when I've approximated it for brief moments, I think that's what makes it fun.
Approximated it being
the Krishnamurti state that he's describing here, a motiveless, timeless state of being. Yeah. I mean, I used to have a lot of practice back when I was writing my dissertation with the spiritualists and the mediums and stuff. I sat a lot for like healing and stuff. All of this is motive driven, but it's sort of like I'm primed to be able to just sit and try different things out in my head. Like my whole academic life has been about, I'll try this technique or whatever. So I think I did a decent job of it, and I do it fairly spontaneously. I don't say, tomorrow at 10. And that's also good for Krishnamurti because I hate routine. I'm not a guy who sits and meditates for 8 hours in the morning or whatever. I'm not a Dalai Lama kind of person. Sorry if that ruins your conception of me out there in listener land, but it probably shouldn't surprise most of you. Nightly prayers, like this is not really my way. But spontaneously, when the mood strikes me, this is when I tend to do things, right? So really that makes sense for Krishnamurti because you shouldn't have a ritual or a plan.
Yeah. I really liked that aspect of it too. It's just letting it, when you feel it, you do it. And that's part of letting go too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like God or who whatever is like, it's time. You kind of have to listen to that.
And it ain't you.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't decide that in advance, so you're not making this choice. Maybe you are. Maybe your beloved is making the choice, but is that your higher mind, and is that not linked up perhaps with a higher mind still?
Do you think that's kind of related or similar to like a conscience?
We think of conscience in that, Jiminy Cricket sense, right?
I was literally just thinking
Where it's like,
that.
it's just a feeling of what's right or wrong or...
Yes, and even when we talked about Ethan Allen Hitchcock, who was obsessed with the conscience, the one's conscience and following one's conscience, it feels so... I'm going to use the word judgmental, like your conscience is perpetually judging you. With Krishnamurti, I feel that less so. Although Hitchcock probably would say, and it's been a while since we've talked about him, he wrote about alchemy, remember?
He was the general, right?
He was a general who wrote about alchemy as a metaphor. He would probably say that following conscience is a natural thing. It's a quiet voice that we just sort of flow with. We go with it. So in that sense, you're right. That is what it is. But I think the challenge, John, is to differentiate between conscience and upbringing. Do I think a thing is wrong because it is wrong for me? Wrong, it's too ego driven or whatever. It's the lie, it's not truth. Or do I think it's wrong because
someone told me it was wrong?
Or the society at large, has situated inside of my head this idea that I shouldn't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same thing where it's like, are these the thoughts that I'm inserting into my mind, or is this actually something else?
Yeah.
It's being able to tell the differences. Coming back to like, that's the hardest part. First, you got to clear your mind, and then second, you got to be able to tell what's what in there.
And I think the labeling of right and wrong can lead us down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad, I guess, would be better.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that makes it sound kind of hedonistic, but to a certain extent, that's it. It's not hedonistic in the so far as you're not like, it's not desire driven. It's about presence and understanding, not about getting what you want or finding what you want, because it's not about you. It's about getting outside of yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't want us to conclude when we're saying, well, it's not really your conscience. It is insofar as maybe it's that quiet voice inside of you, but only after you've shut up all the voices that are louder than it, that maybe are speaking on behalf of, the American legal system or Judeo-Christian ethics or whatever. All those need to be quiet so that we can truly hear the voice. And what the voice is saying is not really desire driven, because your desires are about you, and the voice is the ground of all being, which is the connectedness of everything. So that I want this, woman or this breakfast or this job, that is me, but I am this woman, I am this breakfast, I am this job. Therefore, I shouldn't have these desires. I should just understand my connectedness to these things. Does that... are you with me?
I think so. The connectedness part is difficult.
It's the ground of all being that speaks within you. So it ain't Aleister Crowley. You're not trying to connect with your will and do what your will is, because your will is beside the point. You're trying to connect with your truth, which is beyond desire.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think I got lost somewhere.
Let me try it a different way. Desire is... listeners, this is just me, but this was inevitably going to happen today. Like, we're trying to make sense of a very complicated philosopher here. And a brilliant one. So apologies to Krishnamurti on whatever plane he may be. Desire situates you in time with a goal and a motive, like in a Crowleyite sense, right? Aleister Crowley says, do what thou will, which means you need to figure out what your inner, true deep desires and drives are and realize them. I think that's profound and it's an interesting concept, but it's not Krishnamurti because it has a goal.
Yeah.
You need to be goal free, which means you need to be desire free. You need to just be that your desire, insofar as you have one, needs to be focused on being present for the sake of being present. You need to want nothing as a result, nothing in response.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want this woman, this breakfast, this job, that's all motive driven, and it's all in time, and it's all about something, a future moment. I will have this woman and we will have sex, or I will have this job and people will think I'm good at things, or, I will get, congratulations, or I will have this breakfast. Yeah. And the breakfast will taste good. That's a future state. That's detaching me from the present moment. I'm not actually present because I'm busy digging around in my desires. The present is about being here and now. It's more about flowing with what happens than it is about trying to decide what you would prefer would happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having children. Your preferences don't matter. they still exist. It is. Let me do that metaphor. My children's preferences, and I am not the kind of parent who thinks that their preferences need to govern my life. But to a large extent, I need to silence my preferences so that I can be present with them. Because often they're at cross purposes. So how do we create a situation where we can all be present together? As the adult, I am better equipped to quiet my preferences to create a situation where we're connecting. Mm-hmm. I think that's true when you're making art with other people. It's the same idea. Like you have to quiet your preferences so you can flow with everybody on that stage or, in that room or writing something or whatever until we're all harmonized. But if we're all screaming out about what we want it to be and how we want it to look or whatever, there's no art. The art doesn't get made. The family doesn't get made. Everyone's just living on their own island.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did I answer the desire thing? Oh, these pregnant pauses.
They're so...
There's a lot of processing going on.
I get it, and that's fine. That's good.
Because I'm like listening to you, and once we get to the end, I forgot what the question was.
Well, we started at conscience, but that sort of led us off to like consider whether that deep inner voice is speaking of our desires, but it really can't be, because desires separate us and situate us in time. So it's not speaking about our desires, it's speaking about the present. It's speaking about the truth, about what is. That deep inner voice is connecting us with what's happening right now and here. Mm-hmm. And what really does exist.
Okay.
Not the ideas of what exists.
Or what we would rather, because we don't matter. We mess up the truth as individuals. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about this conversation with the ground of all being is that you cannot intentionally accomplish it. So,
yeah.
Let's get to that part. Krishnamurti was deeply opposed to the use of ritual, including intentional prayer and meditation, because it projected a human goal onto an extra-human or superhuman understanding. To begin, all belief systems are, at best, imperfect routes to the truth, because they do not deal with facts, or what is. He said, whether of Buddha, of Christ, or capitalism, communism, or what you will, they are all ideas, not truth. A fact can never be denied. Opinion about fact can be denied. So if you say, Christ is God, people can be like, well, I don't know about that. Muhammad said Christ is a prophet. I think Christ is a prophet. A fact is not like that. Mm-hmm. We're sitting on chairs. Cannot be denied.
Yes.
So when we get to these deeper questions, he wants us to find a space where we're operating like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We're operating with fact?
With fact.
Yeah, but I feel like, I thought it was like being so set on something makes it not.
It's fact. It's fact from the ground of all being.
Oh.
It's not
Where does that
preconceived
come
fact.
from?
It's just the fact from like when you hold the question when it comes to you, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I think I get it.
All right. I'm going to keep going.
Okay, I'm here. I'm listening.
Social
I'm flowing
structures.
with it.
Good. You're getting the idea. Social structures, education, and religion are all based on copying or imitating, which threaten the individual's capacity to think independently and lead to the destructive worship of authority. He says the following of a pattern is not the understanding of oneself. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. That was an agreeable. Sorry.
We seek to ground ourselves in systems of belief through gurus, for example, and rituals and practices, because they provide us with security. Our craving for security is then our downfall. He said, can you as an individual be free from this urge, this craving to be secure, which expresses itself in the desire to believe in something? In other words, to access truth requires becoming comfortable with, or at least accustomed to, uncertainty. He said, a man who says, I know, there is, or there is not, surely has stopped thinking.
I like that.
This uncertainty gets closer to the unfathomable truth regarding the whole, the totality, and the ground of all being. It should come as no surprise in our modern psychologized age that much of the work of overcoming insecurity begins with a kind of self-exploration, or maybe self-acceptance. He says that we are often in the process of attempting to become something better than we are. Our awareness of our various insufficiencies prompts us to chase after solutions to escape or fill in the holes in our fragile psyches. I'm quoting him here. It is only if you are aware of inward sufficiency, and live with it without escape, accepting it wholly, that you will discover an extraordinary tranquility. There's a kind of like self-obsession when we're constantly critiquing ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need to sit and accept inwardly that we are sufficient. And in accepting that emptiness, one will find that there comes a creative state that has nothing to do with strife or with effort. So what that means is true creativity, which is of the moment and concerned with what is, that is to say, with reality as a fact right in front of us. This is effortless, because effort is struggle, which implies a lack of acceptance of the conditions of one's being. Only when you fully embrace those conditions are you free to create. Surely, he said, when there is no effort, when you are completely open, when on all levels you are in complete communication, completely integrated, then there is joy, and then you begin to sing or write a poem or paint or fashion something. So, art. But only when there's no effort, when you're not trying. I think this is true. I make a lot of bad art when I have to force it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any attempt to purge ourselves of our perceived sins only reiterates the sin in us. If I want to be less greedy or less lustful or less envious, I'm only asserting that I am greedy, lustful, and jealous.
And you're thinking about it.
Right. I think about all those preachers and priests, right? With the lustful thoughts. It's consuming. The inverse is also true. If I want to be more virtuous or loving, this is an admission that I am not virtuous or loving enough, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every day I want to be more loving, and I'm not being loving because I'm trying to be more loving, which says, I'm not sufficiently loving. Instead, you say, I am sufficiently loving. I am not too lustful. I'm fine. And then you can begin. Only by releasing these efforts and allowing myself to simply be can I truly improve. But I cannot do this work of releasing and being present if I am doing them ritualistically for the purposes of spiritual enlightenment. Effort is struggle. Struggle is not the path to truth. He says, the self cannot be destroyed through discipline because discipline is a process of strengthening the self. Any attempt to try and achieve or become something is an act of self-deception. If I want to become free or loving or see the truth, my conception of freedom or love or truth get in the way of my actually experiencing these things. The mind must be still and tranquil, not seeking any answer or solution in order to perceive the truth. Okay, so I know. This is kind of hard to wrap your head around. If I want to know what Krishnamurti knows and is seeking to share, then I have to not try to know it. I have to make no effort to accomplish this understanding. The trying and the effort are barriers. Krishnamurti talks about planting seeds. By internalizing these ideas and working to release memory and systems of belief and commitment to rituals like meditation and prayer, I plant the seeds for my capacity to approach the truth. I mean, that's pretty much what we're doing right now.
But you can't try to, you just have to do it. Right?
The seed is planted and then you let go.
Mm-hmm.
Right
it's
now,
not like, I'm gonna try to do this over the course of 6 months. Just slowly try to get rid of these thoughts. No, you have to turn them off.
Cold turkey. And in my experience, it comes and goes. You have moments of clarity and moments of not clarity. But they're spontaneous. Or should be spontaneous. I can sort of the way it works for me at this point in whatever this is in my spiritual process, what I am doing, and I really do like this philosophy, I am trying it out as much as I can, is I'll be like, all right, I got to stop worrying about this. And then I may have a moment of clarity. But that is still making a bit of an effort. So ultimately I have to get past that. Yeah.
But I feel like it's, I know it says it's effortless and stuff, but I feel like nothing's really effortless. Like, so everything takes effort to do, right? Like,
And I think that this is a little disingenuous on Krishnamurti's part insofar as he absolutely did have specific moments where he would meditate.
yeah. I mean, he was
so-
like sick for months.
Right, but
Like-
that was spontaneous.
Okay.
So he's also a bit spoiled there. He was lucky enough to have these weird psychic experiences where he couldn't keep food down and was miserable. But
And I feel like in a sense, like once he's done with that, like I know it was spontaneous, but it was effort to survive that ordeal,
Yeah.
right? You know, I guess that's what I'm thinking.
I think it also takes effort to continue to hold on to thoughts and things like that as well.
yeah.
So it could be freeing to just let it go.
And he's giving us permission to do that.
But how? How do you
Well,
do that?
Oddly, he suggests a method for meditation. He says, sit and see what's in front of you and try to take it in without judgment or memory. Then close your eyes and see what is inside yourself. The second part is the important part. So if you can see the chair and let go of all your concepts of chair, and then you can close your eyes and see yourself and let go of all your concepts of self, you're on your way to this freedom. But this is a ritual.
Yeah.
And that sounds really hard still.
Yes. This
Baby
is hard.
steps.
He also suggests observing and becoming aware of yourself throughout the day, a kind of mindfulness, watching the whole process of yourself as in a mirror. Trace your thoughts to their origins and then release them. Allow the thought to flower, wither, and die. I like this idea. When you have a thought that's nagging you, or an idea that you just can't quite get right, the idea is not to suppress it or fight it, but to allow it to wither and die. Flower, wither, and die. Allow it to have its full process. I think this may be the trouble with, lustful or greedy thoughts. I think there's a lot of effort in our culture to repress them rather than allowing them to flower, wither, and die.
Yeah. I mean, that's why when you have like very strict parents,
Right.
then you don't actually get to work all those thoughts out correctly, and then they just kind of come out later in a not very well dealt with form.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, of course, about addictions and these sorts of things. Like, what about a thought that won't die? That's intrusive, invasive, or just so repetitive, it won't go away. I think in those cases, though, you're not really allowing it to flower. You're keeping it, like you're clinging to it, you're holding on to it, rather than allowing it to fully go through its cycle and end. Anyhow, self-exploration and self-understanding are the keys to freedom. He says, the emptiness which comes through extraordinary thoughtfulness when the mind sees its own power of creating illusion and goes beyond. This is freedom. There's also a kind of destruction going on here. The point is to take apart each of your thoughts to better understand where it came from and how your mind works. This dissolves old habits and allows your consciousness to start anew. Thoughts and feelings must be allowed again to flower and bloom, to reveal what has been hidden. So maybe that's it when it comes to addiction or addictive or invasive thoughts. You need to let it flower, wither, and die, but you need to watch it as it does this to see how it ticks, where it comes from, why you're having it in the first place.
And also closure, watching it die.
Yeah. If you don't, and you keep bringing it back, you're not letting it go. Even the frustrating, ugly, and evil thoughts need a full exploration in this way. We can't judge ourselves. Getting beyond time and society and ritual requires that action take place without the mind. Once the mind gets into the picture, introduces ideas, and everything falls apart. It places the ideas between the self and the world. We deal with concepts rather than the reality of what exists around us. He says the idea ceases only when there is love. When there is love, which is not mentation, which is not ideation, which is not memory, which is not the outcome of experience, of a practiced discipline, then that very love is action. That is the only thing that frees. This is love in the broadest sense, not romantic love necessarily, although I think it sets a fine example for the idea of love Krishnamurti is getting at. This is the spontaneous, deep love for humanity and for existence. Love takes us outside of ourselves, and it is the self that stands between us and the truth. Our concept of ourselves, our striving and struggling to be something or become something more, or or our idea of what is and what is not. So do you see, you're loving, you're connecting with the other, the breakfast, the woman, the whatever, my job. You connect with these other things, and this ensures that you're outside of yourself. And that's what we really have to do. But love is unconcerned with the self, and so gets to the heart of what is. Love is not time. You cannot practice love. If you do, then it is a self-conscious activity of the me, which hopes through loving to gain a result. You also cannot be aware that you love, or call love into awareness, because this consciousness of love reflects back on the self, and it ceases to be love. It's a thought of love, and no longer love. When you're loving, you're not thinking about the fact that you're loving. Krishnamurti says we only exist in relationship. Perceiving ourselves as individual and separate misses the whole of which we are a part, and so misses the reality of our circumstances. We realize that the thought and the thinker are the same, the maker of the effort and the object of the effort. These collapse into each other in an experience of real understanding. The via negativa, or path of negation, is always haunted by an inner contradiction. If we follow Krishnamurti and abandon all systems of belief in order to approach the truth, we must acknowledge that this in itself is a kind of system of belief, as we've sort of been hinting at all this episode. A tenet of Buddhism is that to cling to the Buddha, or Buddhism, is itself a kind of attachment that prevents true enlightenment. How can we take seriously the teacher's request that we abandon all learning and education and literary knowledge when he's taken the time to write this down for us? You all are hearing it on a podcast because I've read about it in a variety of books, some by Krishnamurti himself. Krishnamurti meditated, but taught that ritual was to be avoided. He ran a school, but taught that knowledge was misleading. He created a system of belief about not following a system of belief. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
In the negation of Krishnamurti himself, the moment when the guru denies all gurus is perhaps the greatest lesson of Krishnamurti's philosophy. The moment we appeal to anything outside of the present moment to justify us, we are unjustifiable. Our next action should be determined by an inner openness, and I might add joy, rather than a predetermined idea or ideology established by someone other than ourself. This is how he caught on in the 60s in part, although he thought that the hippies were misguided and lost. He was talking about self-exploration, self-understanding, and freedom. I mean, these are very hippie concepts. You know what I mean? Very 60s ideas. You turn inside, you tune on, what is it? Turn in, tune on, turn out, tune out. You have to tune out, turn in and turn out, turn on and turn out, something like that. Turn on and tune out. So, right, this LSD philosophy. But this is really what we have to do. And to a certain extent, we have to tune out Krishnamurti. We have to tune out everything and just live our truth honestly and not lie to ourselves about it. Krishnamurti's philosophy is a kind of enthusiastic agnosticism, taken to a place of apotheosis. It's a strange coincidence that he had a relationship with Aldous Huxley, whose grandfather coined the word agnostic to describe his inability to prove or disprove the existence of God. This is true. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. His grandfather coined the word agnostic.
Oh.
And Huxley and Krishnamurti were friends in Ojai. Our next episode will be about Huxley.
I mean, I guess it's wrong to put a label on it, but Krishnamurti's teachings feel relatively agnostic.
Except insofar as agnosticism becomes a deep spiritual commitment. I mean, that's really what he did. He said agnosticism is almost, in a sense, not saying I don't know,
but I can't know.
Right, but there is no path to knowledge.
You can't know.
There is only presence. You can't know in the sense that the religious claim to know.
Yeah.
What you can know, you can still know God. And you can still know, death and afterlife. To some extent, you can approach all of these concepts deeply and spiritually, but not in any way a religion ever has. This philosophy is, as I'm saying, not atheism, because while it rejects established religious systems, it requires steady work on the self in order to achieve a transcendent knowledge. There is a ground of the universe or God to be discovered through self-exploration. When a friend died in 1931, he wrote to his wife that there is something infinitely greater than birth and death, and there is something more permanent, eternal, than all persons. Despite or perhaps because of Krishnamurti's steadfast commitment to let me clarify. When Krishnamurti wrote to the dead man's wife, not his own wife.
Oh, okay. I was confused there.
Krishnamurti wrote to the dead man's wife, there is something infinitely greater than birth and death, and there is something more permanent, eternal than all persons.
Oh, so a man wrote to Krishnamurti about how sad he was about his wife passing away.
No, his wife
his
wrote.
wife
and yes, there you go.
To Krishnamurti about how sad she was about her husband passing away, and that is what
this
he
is
said
what
to
he
her.
said. There's something greater than birth and death, and there is something more permanent than all of us. This is not a very atheistic concept. Despite or perhaps because of Krishnamurti's steadfast commitment to soberly seeking out and discovering what is, his life was colored by supernaturalism. In his long episodes of pain that seemingly fed his spiritual awakening, he insisted on being accompanied, as I mentioned, by one or two people who could guard while he slept against evil forces. During his astral travels, Annie Besant had insisted on these guardians to be sure that no harm came to the body and would have no strong emotional reactions, fear or otherwise, to what took place. There was a danger that Krishnamurti could wander away and never return to his body, or other elements could intervene who wanted to destroy the manifestation. During these episodes, he would say things like, "They are cleansing the brain," and he seemed to believe consistently in a kind of embodied entity that would work with him. When he was tangentially caught up in a scandal involving a female follower who was divorcing her husband for being abusive, he told his followers they need not protect him because there are far greater beings who protect me. He said, "I am like an India rubber toy which a child plays with. It is the child that gives it life." I am like a toy that a child plays with. It is the child that gives it life. One night in India, around 1948, he was having another spell of terrible pain when suddenly the pain subsided and his face transformed. Pupal Jayakar, who was there to witness it, said, "The face was greatly beautiful. It had no age. Time had not touched it. The eyes opened, but there was no recognition. The body radiated light. A still and a vastness illumined the face." After the moment had passed and Krishnamurti had returned to himself, he said, "Did you see that face? The Buddha was here. You are blessed." We've heard this before from him. He told his students that during his early development there was a day when he awoke to find the face beside him, the face of the person he would become, and then one day the face was gone, presumably because it was now his face. Fundamentally, Krishnamurti taught that there was something on the other side of the transformation of consciousness that he sought to inspire in his listeners, but insofar as that something could only be grasped through a spontaneous freedom precipitated by the abandonment of all preconceptions, concepts, thoughts, and time itself, there was no use in teaching what that something is. To hear, rather than experience firsthand, is to insert expectations and ideas between oneself and the experience, and this is the antithesis of Krishnamurti's ideology. Krishnamurti would deny having an ideology or a system, but these are words that could be applied to his ideas. His point was that he couldn't say, do this or do that, believe this or believe that. The key was to expect nothing from action and to believe nothing externally imposed. Although he may have seemed like a guru and collected students, he self-consciously spoke out against India's robust guru culture, a culture we often associate with the West's more seductive and salacious new religious movements, which are often called cults, and there are, now lots of podcasts about them. We're fascinated by cults. But Krishnamurti says, don't bother. Let it go. He was a teacher. He was not a guru. Worship of or high regard for him would do nothing for his students. His image or his touch could not instill divine assistance. Only his teachings could guide, and even then, his students must ultimately go their own road in the inner exploration of the self.
I feel like this almost seems to circle back to, we are God.
The Crowley, Crowley dances around the edges of Krishnamurti, and Blavatsky even. I mean, Crowley and Blavatsky, although they're very different, shared this concept. I mean, Blavatsky thought we all had an aspect of God, and little bit of God inside of us that would eventually, rise up to nirvana and reunite with God.
Yeah, I don't want to say it as a point of like a super selfish ego thing, but it just feels like the fact that you have to find your own path and that it's going to be different for everyone, I feel like in a way to me implies that we are God,
You are your own guru.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a profound idea and a powerful one. I really like it. It's really comforting to me because I think this podcast has always been troubled by gurus. We talk about a lot of them, and we try and delineate the difference between good spiritual teaching and bad spiritual teaching and cult-like teaching and non-cult-like teaching. But Krishnamurti says, relax. Every teacher is to a certain extent wrong for you.
Yeah.
You have to be your own guru. So what I'm talking about, I mean, when I was riffing on Krishnamurti earlier, we had that nice tangent about art and all these different things and the conscience. That's my understanding of Krishnamurti, which is deeply colored by my own spiritual experience of being alive. And
that we're artists.
And that we're artists. But that's a choice, right?
Yeah.
I think to a certain extent, it's maybe inborn in us. I don't know. There's something about us that leads us to this space.
Yeah.
And the people around us are like that.
This is like, I feel like you said this when you first started teaching me, like, what is it, like 10 years ago now?
10 years ago.
Oh my God. But you said this about making art where you're like, if you can picture yourself doing anything else, then go do that because it'll be easier than making art. And I remember that sticking with me because I was like, I can't do anything else other than make art. I don't know. So something like that. Sorry.
No, you're right. It defines our path in a certain way. Like our path is selected for us, but I think you and I will understand what it means for art to create presence and truth and love for us in different ways. There may be a lot of overlap and similarities, but ultimately we have to be our own guru. So yeah, when I said that, I think it's true. But then when you choose that life, I like to think even 10 years ago, I didn't then tell you exactly what it had to look like.
No, you did not at all.
I spent a lot of time telling people, like warning people of the difficulty, but not what the art then had to be that you made.
Well, and I think part of it too is that a lot of people go into certain jobs and professions and things for money and whatnot, and really, but art, especially because of how hard it is to make, you have to really enjoy doing it. Mm-hmm. So I think that was part of it, and also that sometimes art, it can be definitely used for the ego, even with us who love art. It's
especially
like,
art.
Yeah. So it's like, so you can't do it just for the ego of it. Like once I did my first play ever, I was like, I can't picture myself ever not doing this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, feel compelled that way.
I think things like nursing or, medicine could have this quality, right? Good nursing, good doctoring is about getting over yourself and really being fully present and patient with the patient. But yeah, and it can be very humbling. People can be crabby and mean when they're sick or dying, and you're gonna screw up. And I think all of these things are important. So I think there's a lot of these sort of vocational callings that have this quality to them, where as a path, they can really get you to this Krishnamurti state of presence and love, but you have to be willing to go there, and you have to want to go there. And Krishnamurti's saying, you can't have any preconceived ideas about what it looks like or feels like to go there. Mm-hmm. Broadway babies are not living the Krishnamurti art life.
No.
They are following a very heavily culturally prescribed route to being in Wicked. You know what I mean? There's no freedom there at all. And if they think they're free, that's kind of an illusion. Mm-hmm. Freedom is about letting go of what everyone told you it's supposed to be. I guess in medicine you shouldn't do that. But I don't know. It's so much. Art is such an overlap between life and vocation, life and job. But yeah, in life, you've got to give it up. You got to quit trying to be this thing that you think you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But you also can't be this thing that Krishnamurti said you should be.
Oh, man.
You need to look inward and connect with whatever makes you present. I think that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that pulls you into presence. And I think, we're even being a little prescriptive here, Savannah. I don't think it's always art for me. Sometimes parenting makes me very present. Sometimes friendship makes me very present. Podcasting can make me very present.
I was thinking that too.
Teaching, each of these is theoretically an outlet to being present and loving and giving for the sake of the thing. But we have to be willing to go there. And in order to go there, we do have to let go of every concept we've had of what it means to get there. When you know that you don't know how to get there, then you will have gone. I'm paraphrasing Krishnamurti, I think, from last episode. Remember, it was something like that. Yeah. You don't know how to get to the truth. If you do, then you would have the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So once you accept that, the truth is there. You're there. You've already made it. I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors until such a time as we get together and do it again. I am your non-guru and supreme hierophant, Dr. Rob C. Thompson, here with Johnny Cook, our patron pre-progenitor.
Sad this is the last episode.
Yeah, but we did it.
We did.
We did it. This is quite a climb.
Yeah.
Savannah Verrett, our sister of the 85th degree.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That's all I can say.
We turn to Aldous Huxley next, maybe an episode or so about Huxley. Particularly his experiments with drugs. Huxley, as I said, was a friend of Krishnamurti's in Ojai, so he'll match up with this series. However, when we finish with Huxley, we will move on to some very interesting interviews I think you're going to enjoy. We've had some really cool conversations with authors and YouTubers in the area of occultism and studies of occult thoughts and ideas. And when we're done that, it's time for Mormon magic, friends, here on Occult Confessions.
Do you think that Krishnamurti believed that he was the incarnation of the Lord Maitreya?
That's tough. I think that he believed he had arrived at the truth, and so to that extent, Ledbetter and Besant's prophecy had been fulfilled. However, everything else they had to say about it was projected by a very specifically delineated belief system.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
He was the beloved, not the Lord Maitreya. But the Lord Maitreya is perhaps a refracted concept of the beloved. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that goal was put on him. And then at the end of, in his teachings, he's like, goals are bad. You can't
Right.
do goals. Well, not bad, but yeah. I mean, I guess bad. That's right. Good and bad doesn't seem to apply. Just don't do it.
I think that if we're really nice and critical about Krishnamurti's life and teaching, we realize, what we're talking about at the end here, that his teaching is not going to work perfectly for us because we are not him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, what you guys are talking about is to a certain extent the bullshit he had to get over.
Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking when you were saying, like, he saw the face and he's like, oh, the Buddha's here. And it's like, well, it sounds like he was raised thinking that the Buddha was the spiritual teacher.
Yeah. And ultimately he got over, I think, that idea. But something was there, the beloved, whatever. Something was there. And it took him a long time to acknowledge that it was something and not this specific thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of this is a reaction to his biography. And a lot of it is his interaction with the truth. I mean, the Buddha makes no sense without Hinduism, and Christ makes no sense without Judaism. That tells us something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You need their context in order to really grasp what they're saying. So we, to find the same truth as Christ, Buddha, or Krishnamurti, have to do it within our context, which is unique to each one of us.
I like that.